a show that tackles the big issues affecting the BVI and the rest of the Caribbean. Searches for answers to today's big questions and gives viewers a unique perspective on developing stories. Follow the big story with me, Kathy Richards, only on JTV. This show is brought to you by the National Bank of the Virgin Islands, Cyril B. Ramney Turtola Pier Park, NV Salon, Nail Spa and Barbershop, Tisley Cross Deliciously Smooth Cider, and Digicel, simply more speed, reliability and entertainment.
Plug into Digicel Plus and get even more entertainment with Disney Plus included. The best of Disney, Pixar, Marvel, Star Wars, and National Geographic all in one place. Whenever you want, plug into Plus to enjoy Disney Plus and much more with a home fiber bundle. Sign up today. Digicel Plus.
This is the big story. I'm Kathy Richards. I want to thank you so much for joining us for this edition. Forgive my hoarseness today. Just woke up this morning and the weather did what it had to do to my voice. So I'm a little bit hoarse, a little bit coffee, but I'm doing well. I want to welcome you to the set. We have today the president of the BVI Alzheimer's Association, Ryan Luck. It's a pleasure having you. Croaky, but you understand.
No problem at all, Kathy. Thanks so much for having me today, and certainly welcome to everybody. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, especially about one of my favorite topics, which is Alzheimer's.
I know, and I've heard you present on it on so many different occasions, and you were so well informed and enthusiastic about this entire topic, and that is Alzheimer's. This month, September, is dedicated towards the awareness, promotion, advocacy, and all of that when it comes to Alzheimer's. And the association here in the Virgin Islands, of which you're president, is doing so much. But before we get to what you're doing, let's talk a little bit about the background of Alzheimer's, where we are as a people. What really is Alzheimer's?
It's a good question, Kathy, and it's something that we get asked so often. Alzheimer's is a brain degenerative condition that used to be very common in older persons over the age of 65. But one thing we're finding nowadays is that the age is creeping down in terms of the persons who are starting to develop early onset of Alzheimer's, and that's something that's extremely worrying for us as a society, especially here in the BVI. Alzheimer's isn't something that is quick and over. It's, as I said, it progresses over a significant period of time, and it sometimes persons who are living with Alzheimer's, sometimes it can be 7 years, 10 years, I've seen up to 20 years, 25 years from essentially early onset to essentially death. So it can be extremely slow and mentally extremely painful and taxing on not only the individual, but certainly on the caregivers and the families and friends who see the progression and certainly remember the person as they were and see the person essentially decline in a very slow manner. So it's not a great disease, certainly. And
I don't think any disease.
No diseases, exactly. So, but it's. But like I said before, it's worrying for us here in the BVI, and it's a good segue into sort of why we in the BVI should be concerned is because there are a lot of risk factors that are sort of prevalent here in the BVI area, or things such as high blood pressure, diabetes or sugar, hypertension, high stress. I mean, these are things that are common amongst persons who have developed Alzheimer's in things that lead to them. These are high risk factors that we look at. So Alzheimer's is really it's a lifestyle disease. It's not, there isn't a cure for it, and that's what makes it very concerning. But with proper education, proper literacy, and proper understanding and awareness from society, it can be slowed down if it's caught early. And that's why we as an Alzheimer's Association are essentially hitting the ground hard every single month, especially during the month of September, to increase the awareness of Alzheimer's here in our society, so that people can understand sort of what it is, but more why it's relevant to them, and so they can understand the risk factors and how to recognize those early symptoms. Because by recognizing symptoms early, there are medications that can help to slow the progression down and increase the quality of life of the persons living with Alzheimer's, but also of their families and caregivers.
So I want to pull quickly on two things that you would have mentioned. You said we're noticing persons from a younger age now developing Alzheimer's, and you also talk about the stress factor. Is there a relationship between the period that we would have gone through a pandemic, where we would have seen an increased number of persons coming down with severe stress situations, as well as coming down with Alzheimer's? Is there a relationship?
Well, certainly, as I said before, I mean, stress is a high risk factor for Alzheimer's. Whether there's a relationship here in the BVI right now, it's probably too early to say. Okay. We might know in 20, 25 years from now, when we sort of look back and we chart progression. But that's where we need data. One of the things here in the BVI is we're not great on collecting data. And as an association, having that data to understand how many persons here in the BVI are living with Alzheimer's, and tracking that over a period of time will help us to understand what sort of impacts some of these things have within the BVI. Because I mean, I have heard statistics here essentially saying that 60% or 70% of the people in the BVI right now are in that high risk area, especially when it comes to the chronic illnesses. Exactly. So these are all high risk factors, and if we have such a high percentage of the population already living with these chronic illnesses, it is extremely concerning from a society's point of view, and certainly from a governmental point of view as well. Alzheimer's is very expensive to treat because of the length of time where a person lives with Alzheimer's, from essentially early onset straight through. So it's worldwide. It's billions and billions and billions of dollars every single year are spent on Alzheimer's treatment. And we can ill afford that here in the BVI, especially with such a small population. So it's something that I personally feel very concerned about with the high stress levels we are living under. As you said, I mean, certainly Hurricane Irma was one of those initial trigger points, and I think we're still seeing effects from that. And we see the impacts of that in children, we see the impacts of that in young adults, we see the impacts of that in the elderly as well. So it wouldn't surprise me that at some point in time you will start to see the unfortunate effects of those stress factors on development, not only of Alzheimer's, other dementias as well, because of the high risk factors that we undertake here in the BVI.
One of the very common things when they're dealing with conditions like this is that there's a stigma attached to Alzheimer's. Why is this, and how can we move past having a stigma attached and start to work more with people who are affected? I think it starts from understanding the condition, basically. It
does. And that's a very good point. I mean, one of the major areas when it comes to World Alzheimer's Month is it's not only increasing the awareness, but also reducing the stigma. And that's from Alzheimer's Disease International. They have really a two pillar approach to approaching it. The stigma is, I think it's probably lack of understanding, and it's probably an avoidance tactic as well. That persons are not likely to come forward or not likely to want to talk about it because there isn't a cure right now. And they do understand when somebody is showing early onset Alzheimer's, what that essentially will entail for the rest of their lives. So, but there's what we try to promote here with the Virgin Islands Alzheimer's Association is the concept of they're not alone. And that's what I think sometimes with the stigma gets attached to it, that people feel that they're battling this alone. Family members feel that they're alone in this battle, in this struggle. Persons living with Alzheimer's feel that they're alone in this, and that's not the case at all. We're creating a support system here through the Virgin Islands Alzheimer's Association. We have support groups that we've started and are currently operating, and even this month we're holding a training for caregivers. So it's a targeted training at caregivers here in the Virgin Islands. That together with government, and it's a funded program through Rotary and through the Virgin Islands Alzheimer's Association, to provide the necessary education and techniques on how to properly care for a person with Alzheimer's, because it is a cumbersome process, and it's something when I did a presentation recently at Rotary, it was an item that was sort of raised is even from first responders, how difficult do they find it when they're responding to a call with somebody with either dementia or Alzheimer's? How do they treat or how do they react to the situations? And those are extremely important. So these are all the things that we're trying to promote, is providing that awareness, providing that support, but more just providing the comfort that as a society we're all in this together, and I think if we tackle this together, we understand the symptoms, we understand what it takes, but we learn from each other, then it will reduce the burden, I think, on family members.
Some family members understand the symptoms, but the signs, how does Alzheimer's display itself?
Yeah, I mean, Alzheimer's, we talk about 10 warning signs of Alzheimer's, the 10 early warning signs, because there's early warning signs such as forgetfulness, and that's one that's common amongst all cases of Alzheimer's, is that concept of forgetfulness. And we often confuse forgetfulness with aging, and that's what we often say, is that aging or forgetfulness is not a common part of aging. Okay. It is, you often do see it, but a lot of times when you do see it, it's actually early symptoms of Alzheimer's. But if it happens in somebody in sort of late stages, maybe for instance 80, 85 plus, obviously they might not go through all of the cycles or all of the symptoms for Alzheimer's before they pass away. But there are, like I said, aging is a common one. When you're having conversations and you see that conversation repeating over and over and over again in a very short period of time, where you might have a conversation 5 minutes later, the person starts up with the same conversation again, and then that should be a trigger that maybe something is wrong. Misplacing things in very strange locations. Research says, well, things like maybe putting things in where you commonly put them, and all of a sudden now you're putting them in a different area. For instance, you place your keys always in a bowl on the middle of the table when you walk in, but now all of a sudden you're finding your keys in the refrigerator. Or your cell phone, all of a sudden you find in a refrigerator or something. They use a refrigerator for some reason. Not sure why. Because it's a very strange place to find. But it's very common items, because you do. People often go into the fridge. But when you're finding these things in strange spots, again, these are the things that are triggering probably some concern. Having problems with spatial, essentially spatial awareness. You're having problems with judging distances. That can be an early warning sign. I mean, it can be a sign of other things as well, but it's certainly one of those early warning signs, is that a person is that they stumble and trip, or they're having problems driving all of a sudden. And it's all to do with how well they're able to judge their distances. So there is essentially 10 early warning signs, and it's a graphic and infographic that we push out quite often, because, as I said before, recognizing those early warning signs, if you do catch it very early with medication, it can be slowed down. Slow down, can it be stopped? No, unfortunately it can't be stopped. Wow. As I said before, Alzheimer's, there is no way to stop it or to turn back the clock, so to speak, on it. But you can slow it down to a manageable pace. Once discovered early. Once discovered early. But the thing is, and that's why it's important with those early symptoms, is when you get into the mid-term or mid-range part about Alzheimer's, then medication doesn't have a significant impact anymore, and then it's a progression downward from there. There's not a whole lot from a medical point of view, but then there's other things that can be done as well to improve the quality of life of the person. I mean, we've seen tremendous work being done, say, sort of, for instance, on musical therapy, and this is something I spoke about at a recent presentation as well. And it's incredible what the power of music can do on somebody who has not only Alzheimer's or dementia, but any sort of a brain disorder. Music has that ability to touch a part of the brain that often is undamaged from a lot of diseases and disorders. So seeing that person react or hear music that they would have understood, that they would have remembered, and they would have listened to, and they would have enjoyed in their earlier life, and though they might not know who you are, they might not know where they
can
are.
relate to that music.
Exactly. You see them instantly light up, and it's incredible to see. I've watched a number of movies and videos just about the reactions and things like that. So musical therapy is something that's used quite often by persons treating Alzheimer's, and also in dementia cafes and Alzheimer's cafes, and those are becoming quite common, especially in the larger cities, whereas it's just a space where persons living with Alzheimer's can go and their family members can take them to, and they can interact with others, because the human interaction is still extremely important as part of the as part of the care of a person. You don't isolate a person living with Alzheimer's. You allow them to interact with persons, interact with society, and things like that in small doses. You're certainly not going to bring them into large crowds and for an extended period of time and expect that everything will be fine. But if you in small cases, and especially when they're with other persons, it's amazing on how well they can interact.
Is there a relationship between Alzheimer's and senility?
That's probably more of a medical term that's really over my head. But I think senility is, in my understanding, is something that's often confused with Alzheimer's. I think that's why
I went there.
Yeah, we used to call it a person going senile or other terms, but nowadays we can put a medical term on it, or a number of medical terms, because then it's easier to treat. Because calling a person being sort of senile, it can be any one of different medical conditions that they might have. But when they have Alzheimer's, or when they have one of the other various forms of dementia, there are direct ways that they're treated. There's also medications that directly treat them as well. So it's important that we put proper labels on these things. It's important that we get persons diagnosed, and like I said, diagnosed early, because there are persons even here in the BVI who are trained in how to diagnose Alzheimer's and dementia. And it's important then that that a family member, a friend who starts to see those early warning signs, that they make sure that the person gets some proper treatment, just to see whether or not that there's anything they need to be concerned about.
Before we move on to the program, to the activities that you have planned for this month, I think we've invited someone who is caring or has cared for someone with Alzheimer's, and I think she's here. If we take a quick break and have her join us to hear, of what it takes to deal with someone with Alzheimer's. We'll be right back.
Plug into Digicel Plus and get even more entertainment with Disney Plus included. The best of Disney, Pixar, Marvel, Star Wars, and National Geographic, all in one place. Whenever you want, plug into Plus to enjoy Disney Plus and much more with a home fiber bundle. Sign up today. Digicel Plus.
Welcome back. So we're talking about Alzheimer's, this being Alzheimer's Awareness Month, and now we're joined by Miss Philippa Barry, Mrs.
Yes, that's
Philippa
correct.
Barry, and we want to hear from you your experience dealing with your mom, who is a person who is experiencing Alzheimer's at this stage.
Okay, I wouldn't say it is being diagnosed with Alzheimer's, but it is also nonetheless type of a dementia. And her dementia is actually, or Alzheimer's is really called vascular dementia.
Oh.
And that actually stemmed from my mom. She has been diagnosed with hypertension, and that usually occur in persons, who don't necessarily take the medication, and that was her case, where she has been a busy person because she was a proprietor for a store, a little superette. And though that I have been actually encouraging my mom to take her medication because it is very beneficial, and that's most oftentimes went on deaf ears. And what happened is that it led up to the point where she practically used to go overseas, to Puerto Rico to buy her stuff, for the store. And it was this one particular Saturday, she called me and she says that she needed me to come to the house, And then when I got there, that's when she started to explain to me that, I just went through something, it's like I had this blackout, for a couple moments, and it's like I didn't know, I was so disoriented. And I said to her, I said, Mom, did you take your medication? She was like, no. So she says, okay, well, in that case, I want you to take me down to the where you go and get your ticket, the travel agent. I said, oh no, I'm not taking you to no travel agent. I'm going to take you to the doctor. And I did take her to Dr. Bain, and that was her doctor. And when I was there sitting waiting, she came out to me and she says, listen, you are a blessing, because if had your mom had waited a little longer, you would not have had your mom today. Because she says she have never seen a blood pressure as high as my mom's blood pressure was. And I did try to explain to her what had happened. And then, I did actually, started to encourage her and make sure that she was taking her medication. But we noted afterwards, she was tending to, lose her memory and, going slower and stuff like that. And I actually would take her, on the weekend. She would stay by me on the weekend. And there was this one particular day when I went to pick her up, and I noticed that when she was approaching the vehicle, I noticed she was having like this slur,
swaying and
like walking, this limp. And I said, is your foot hurting? She says no. And I took her to the doctor, and that's when he did the test and assessment and everything, and the CAT scan. And that's when he showed me in terms of, the vessels. What happened is that there's some tiny vessels in the brain. And because of the pressure, and then she was not necessarily, and that's what he told me, that she was having a series prior to the time when she wasn't taking her medication. She was having a series of strokes, mini strokes. And that's why it was actually being diagnosed as vascular dementia. And since then, she's been on and off. I think in that occurred like around 2009 when that incident happened. And 2016, she was doing fine. I was making sure, but her problem is my problem for her, I was getting difficulty because she never really liked to take medication. That was the problem.
And it's a problem with many of us.
Yes.
When we're diagnosed with a condition and we administer medication, it's usually a problem to be adherent.
And by profession, I'm a registered dietitian.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
So I always been behind her, you know, in terms of making sure that she eat properly and all of that stuff. But again, that went on deaf ears. But I said to her, okay, well, since you're in this position now, I have you all to myself. So I am going to be the boss.
Daughter turns mom.
Yeah, so yes, she been in the hospital, I think 2016. And it so turned out that we weren't on island. Both myself and my sister, you know, who have been really pretty much the caretaker, you know, and we did have somebody staying with her, you know, at the time, but when we were away, the caretaker said that she had to take her into the hospital. And then we came home shortly after, and when she was in the hospital, again, she was having those mini strokes because she was not actually taking those medications as she should. So I told the doctor that I would like her to go home, you know, if they can actually insert a peg. And that is actually inserted in the stomach, you know, which is called, for short, percutaneous endoscopic gastrostomy, you know, and that's where she can get her feed, you know, and it's going to be actually inserted on the upper part of her intestine, so that, you know, the food, you know, once it's broken down and
it goes through the process.
So I did make sure in terms of the feed, because and it also too, she was able to get the medication via the tube. So simultaneously I was giving her like what is called the real food blend, and that actually has, you know, the, like, you know, a meal, an actual meal, which is in the healthy form. Is this company that actually provides, you know, and they make it into so that it can go via the tube. So she was getting like salmon, brown rice, and broccoli, and it's actually mixed in with flaxseed oil, made with flaxseed oil, and you know the benefit of those fatty acids, you know, that will be helpful. Though that, you know, she would not necessarily be cured from it, but at least, you know, and she wasn't really, you know, responsive in the sense that you couldn't have a conversation with her during that time. But since I fed her, you know, continuously on those feed in the first, like, maybe 3 weeks to a month, and my mom have really rebounded, you know, to the point where I still have her actually take with the peg, and that is for the medication, because I know that she would not take it. But
despite what she has experienced.
Yes, she transitioned from not being able to feed herself to the point where she's actually eating by her mouth and feeding herself as well.
That speaks a lot, Ryan, to the level of care and support that persons who are with that condition do need. But it also, I really allowed you to tell that story so persons could understand the gravity, why you wouldn't want a person to get to that stage, why you would want to recognize from a very early stage if you are having signs, if there are any symptoms. Why, if you have a person that is in that the need for family support, what it takes, you know. We commend you for being there for you, but we know there are so many people who are out there that cannot get that level of care and support from, you know, family that is around or not around for them. And for some people it's the economics, you know, they can't afford to do it to a certain level. So that brings us to what you're doing this month, Ryan. The association is
well, I mean, in listening to Ms. Berry, heard the story, I mean, a lot of things sort of it sort of brings home, I think, a lot of what we speak about, especially in the area of the awareness, or how important proper care is.
Yes, it is.
And in not only in essentially the quality of life, the person living with Alzheimer's and dementia, their quality of life. I mean, hearing the story and understanding that when the person is receiving the proper medication, when they're receiving the proper care and the proper foods, how much of an impact that can make, and how but also alternatively how detrimental it can be if it's left. If nobody is treating it as you said. So that's really one of the large things that we are pushing this month. As I said before, one of the big things that we are doing this month is we have 2 phases or 2 streams of training for caregivers. That's targeted directly towards caregivers training. So that caregivers get the proper training that Ms. Berry was talking about, so they can understand what skills they need, how to interact, react, and so on, and what to expect. So we are holding that. It is a closed session, so that is something that we work closely with the Ministry of Social Development on to provide a list of caregivers here in the BVI to make sure that they have an extended level of training. So we are doing that, but we also have a person by the name of, and I can't remember his first name, I think it's Barry Greiner, whose mother recently passed away from Alzheimer's. He's from the US, but his mother became very well known because there's a series of videos on what I spoke to before about the impact of music and on dementia patients and things like that. Yes, it does. So he's actually coming to speak an open session. I think it's on the 22nd of this month about the life of a caregiver. So what he experienced as a primary caregiver for his mother, and what techniques he had. So that'll be an open session on the 22nd. I think it's at 10 a.m. at the Methodist Church Hall here in Roadtown. So if persons are interested, keep a lookout on our Facebook page for VI All's Aware. That's essentially our Facebook name, or you can just search for VI Alzheimer's Association. On that, we also have we started the month with a very nice worship service at the New Testament Church of God, and certainly thank you to Bishop Cousins and Bishop Charles for taking us in and allowing us to speak briefly to the congregation, but sort of to get blessing for that, and also to just get blessing for anybody who is living with Alzheimer's, and for the family members and caregivers as well. Provide that little extra oomph, a little extra support for them as well. We have our large event for a public event is our walk to raise awareness for Alzheimer's, which will be held on the 23rd of September, just after World Alzheimer's Day on the 21st. Okay. So World Alzheimer's Day is celebrated or recognized globally on the 21st of September, but because that follows in the middle of the week, we wanted to hold our walk on the 23rd, sort of at the end of the week. So that'll be starting at 4:45. That entire day on the 23rd, we want persons to wear purple. In recognition of Alzheimer's and other dementias. And then come out for the walk at 4:45, starting at Noel Lloyd Park, and then we'll be ending that walk with a candlelight vigil, remembering persons who are living with Alzheimer's, remembering persons who have passed away, and also remembering their families and caregivers as well, showing that extra support. So please do come out on the 23rd. As everybody would have seen in the middle of town, we have lit up the roundabout. Yes. With a few more lights coming, but we are just essentially to assist in raising awareness. Whenever you're driving at night and see that roundabout and see the purple lights, remember Alzheimer's. Remember to help raise the awareness. Yes. So anything that you see from us on Facebook and social media, I just ask the general public to share it, to read it first, read it, understand it, and also share it amongst their friends, forward it, share it. To help try to raise the awareness, because it is really a grassroots campaign that we try to do. We do it with great funding from a lot of our sponsors and things like that, but we do a lot of social media campaigning, because we find how we get the message across the best. Sessions like this with you, Kathy, and other media houses and things like that, to do some of the sessions, the tape sessions, to help so that people can see it over and over again. But it's not only during this month but we obviously focus our efforts this month, but we do raise awareness all year round. Alzheimer's is a 24-hour a day, 360 day a year disease. It doesn't stereotype on age or on ethnicity, although unfortunately it's more common with the Black population. Yes. So that's why you see within the Caribbean, especially, you see a lot of you see an increase in cases because of those risk factors that I spoke about before.
Awesome. Okay. So with that being said, we're on the clock. We've got to wrap this. But I really want to thank you so much, Philippa, for coming and share with us. It has caused me to have an even greater appreciation for what persons go through in terms of caring for loved ones with the condition. It also melts my heart to know that there are so many others out there who do not get the level of care and support. And we can, bit by bit, do our part as a community to show care, love, and support for persons who are living with the condition. But we can also take stock of ourselves, observe ourselves, have discussions, and like Ryan would have said, follow the information that you share far and wide via social media or otherwise to get more information. Let's build our education base about this condition, dementia, and all of it. I want to thank you so much for taking time out to come and share, Philippa. Our love to you, Ryan. Thank you so much to you and the members of the association for what you do. We are here to support as much as we can and as far as we possibly can. And I want to thank you for taking some time out to give us an ear on this very topic of Alzheimer's. I'm Kathy Richards. I want to thank you so much for joining us for this edition of The Big Story.